Hello, welcome back to the YouTube channel. I am Nick from Australia. Hope you guys are doing well tonight. So this is going to be another preview video for the 2020 season. Obviously the two rounds have already happened. There's been a stop to the season due to the virus. I don't want to say the word because it's a terrible word, but so I'm going to be doing a preview tonight on the Melbourne Storm for 2020. What I think they lack, what I think they gain, what I think they can do to improve. So without further ado, welcome to the NRL Melbourne Storm 2020 preview by Nick from Australia. So first thing we'll do, like we did with the Parramatta one, we'll go through their best 1 to 17 in my opinion. Obviously, guys like Craig Bellamy and the coaching staff of Melbourne Storm will have a completely different opinion, but this is the Melbourne Storm 17 that I would field if I was a coach or some sort of influence there. So let's go through the side that I've selected. Fullback, Ryan Papenhuyzen. On the wings, Suliasi Vunivalu and Josh Adokar. In the centres, Jerome Hughes and Justin Olam. 5'8", Cameron Munster. Halfback, Riley Jacks. Front row, Jesse Bromwich, Nelson Asafa Solomona. The hooker and captain, the greatest player of all time, Cameron Smith. The second row, Felice Kafusi, Kenny Bromwich, and at lock, Dal Finucane. And the bench, Brandon Smith, Tia Kamakamefa, Christian Welsh, and Marian Seve. Now, the first thing that you guys are probably thinking, why the hell do I have Jerome Hughes in the centres? And why the hell do I have Riley Jacks at halfback? But the thing is, halfback, there's three names you can really debate over. But look, I think the obvious ones are, the team's pretty straightforward to pick. It's the Melbourne Storm, for crying out loud. They don't have much weakness, but we'll get into that in a little bit. But as of the side that I think that this would be their best 1 to 17, because if you look at Melbourne, now Jerome Hughes, he's a solid player. I've always liked Jerome Hughes. He's not overrated. He's not underrated. He's a solid player. He may be underrated a little bit, but he's playing with Melbourne. So when you're playing with Melbourne, you don't really go underrated very often. But look, Jerome Hughes is a solid player. I don't see him as a long-term halfback. Now, I'd like to be proven wrong. If anyone's going to prove me wrong here, it's going to be someone like Craig Bellamy, who's probably the best coach that's ever coached rugby league, along Wayne Bennett and a couple of others. But look, I don't see Jerome Hughes leading the Melbourne Storm at halfback to a premiership. Now, a lot of people will say, oh, Melbourne don't need a halfback, but they do. You need your number sevens. They're very important. And I honestly think Jerome Hughes would make a really good centre. Obviously, he would be on the right side, because their left side's obviously got Munster, Kenny Bromwich, Olam, and Adokar. But look, I think Jerome Hughes should try and play in the centres. I think he could do a really good job there. I just don't see him as a halfback, really. Now, with the halfback position that I decided to go with, there's three guys, really. You got Riley Jacks, who was there before, went to the Gold Coast for a year, went back to Melbourne. Smart decision, go back to Melbourne. I believe that's a smart decision. Cooper Johns, which is Matty Johns' kid, I believe. And the other one is Nico Hines. Now, they're the three guys that are coming through the Melbourne Storm system who'll probably get a crack at the halfback position sometime soon. Now, with all due respect to Jerome Hughes, if Jerome Hughes has 2 or 3 average games or terrible games, he'll be out, and then he'll be looking for a new club to go to, like what happened with Scott Drinkwater and Brodie Croft. Scott Drinkwater left because the Cowboys were looking for a position at fullback. Brodie Croft left because he was getting dropped, and he wasn't getting along with the Melbourne Storms. I don't think he was getting along with the system. So look at Drinkwater now, great young 5'8" at the Cowboys, and Brodie Croft, a solid halfback at the Broncos. So, the Melbourne Storm just seem to keep finding all these players. But look, I think Melbourne would be a better side, and I think they'd score more points. if they had a genuine number 7 in that position. Overall, the forward pack is obviously phenomenal with Bromwich, a Sofa Solomona who gets me nervous. Felice Kafusi can be a quiet player, but he also can be a bit of a grub, but he's a solid player when he's not doing stupid stuff. Kenny Bromwich, a little bit underrated, a very good back row there. Dale Finucane, solid. And the bench, obviously Brandon Smith is an absolute freak. I was out the All-Star game watching him play. It was unbelievable. Kamikamefa's the future, I believe. Christian Welsh, coming back from injury, will be a good thing. And the other one that I went with is Marion Seve. He came out of the Brisbane Broncos system, I believe. He's at the Melbourne Storm at the moment, but he's playing in the centres at Melbourne. I don't know if he's ready for first grade, but again, I like to be proven wrong, so we'll see what happens. Now, let's get on to the Melbourne Storm, what they actually lack. Now, in my opinion, the Storm lack a great halfback. They don't have a game manager, and I also think they do lack a bit of experience. You know, the loss of Will Chambers is actually a bigger loss than what people actually think. Now, I think they will find someone to replace Will Chambers with. That's why I mentioned someone like Jerome Hughes who could transition into that centre position. But if I don't know about Marion Seve yet. I think he's a solid young kid, but I don't know if he's ready for first grade. You know, losing an Origin centre and then replacing him with a young kid coming out of a Queensland Cup, Brisbane Broncos area, it's not really the best idea. But look, young players will learn clearly. But look, the thing with Melbourne, they are lacking a genuine game manager halfback. They don't have that game management. I understand Cameron Munster and Cameron Smith are the guys that run the side. But if you go back to 2019 for a minute, when Melbourne absolutely dominated that regular season, they finished first by about 3 or 4 games. Going into the finals, I was never ever confident that they were going to do a lot of things. Now, they were figured out. Canberra figured them out. They figured out their left side attack because that's clearly their best side. And their right side attack was weak as piss. Jerome Hughes, solid play, but not a halfback. Kafusi couldn't get the ball. Chambers didn't do much. And Vunivalu was just being a grub. But look, until Melbourne can find a halfback, like a genuine number 7, like one of the young players I mentioned, like Nico Hines, Riley Jacks, or Cooper Johns, if Melbourne just go with Jerome Hughes at halfback, I can't see Melbourne winning the premiership until they replace Jerome Hughes at halfback. If you look over the years, all the sides that have won the premiership, they've all been dominant halfbacks. You know, the Roosters had Cronk, the Cowboys had Thurston, Manly had Cherry Evans, the Roosters and Storm both had Cronk, like I said. Cronulla had Chad Townsend, who was a dominant 7. Jimmy Maloney was basically the 7 when Cronulla won the premiership. Adam Reynolds at South Sydney. You know, all these players. You've got to have, and Mitchell Pearce is another one. You've got to have dominant halfbacks, game managers to win premierships. Now let's get on to what they have gained. Now, to be honest, Melbourne haven't really gained anything. They haven't really lost anything. What they probably have gained is a bit of youth with guys like Olam and Brian Pappenhausen. They have got a little bit more of attack in them. But it's only on one side of the field. It's only on the left side. So, you know, I think Munster and Cameron Smith are the key to the Melbourne Storm. I think their left side attack is obviously the key. But I'd like to see their right side get a bit of attack on them as well. Overall, I think they're going to have another solid season. Now, let's go to... Look, I think... like I said, you know, I think they've gained a lot. I've just got a few notes here that I wrote down. The other thing, too, is... A positive thing for Melbourne is, in the regular season, they are so hard to beat in Melbourne. Very tough to beat in Melbourne in the regular season. Now, the predicted finish, what I will say is, I believe the Storm will finish first again. They will be minor premiers. They'll dominate the regular season. It's a great side overall. and they're one of the teams to beat. I think they're probably one of the favourites, aren't they, Melbourne? Melbourne and Sydney Roosters, probably the two favourites to take it out this year. But look, overall, I believe Melbourne Storm will finish in first position, and I think they'll be minor premiers. The other thing, too, that I want to mention, now, this has got nothing to do with the preview for 2020. I've got a good memory of this. If you look at Melbourne Storm's finals record in Melbourne, it's fucking absolutely horrendous. You won't believe it. So, I didn't write any of this down, as you can see. I just wrote down a few notes for the season, but I know this off the top of my head because I have a good memory of this. 2011, Melbourne finished first. They got the week off. They played Newcastle, got the week off, and they played Warriors in the preliminary final, and they got beaten. That's what they lost them. They have a habit of losing finals in Melbourne. Now I'll explain. 2011 preliminary final, they lost to the Warriors in Melbourne. 2012 they won the premiership, obviously. 2013 they lost to Newcastle in a semi-final in Melbourne. Newcastle won that game 18 points to 16, and the Warriors beat the Storm in 2011 20 points to 12. And then 2014, Melbourne played the Bulldogs in the elimination final on a Sunday afternoon in Melbourne, and the Bulldogs beat them, I think it was 30 points to 6 or something in the end. And then in 2015, they played the Cowboys in a preliminary final in Melbourne again, and they lost that preliminary final in Melbourne to the Cowboys. So, and obviously they lost last year's qualifying final to the Raiders in Melbourne. Melbourne's finals record in Melbourne is absolutely horrendous. Now, like I said, I believe Melbourne will dominate the regular season because they're pretty much the kings of it, with Cameron Smith being fresh early in the year and guys like Munster who are pretty much born to have a really good year and a great forward pack. I don't think Melbourne will win the premiership in 2020, but let me just say this. I am not writing the Melbourne Storm off, but they are massive contenders. They're a top 2 side. Wouldn't be surprised if they win the premiership, but for 2020, I am not riding the Melbourne Storm's coattail. I am off the bus of the Melbourne Storm. I am not tipping them to win the comp. I think they'll finish first, and I think they'll go out in the finals, whether that be week 2 or week 3. One of them anyway. But I don't think Melbourne can win the premiership this year without a halfback, without a game manager halfback, and without they're missing a little bit of strike there. They're missing one piece in the centre position. Let's be honest. Overall, they'll finish first, I think, and they'll have a good year. Anyway, guys, hope you guys enjoyed the preview. Make sure you guys go ahead and like, comment, subscribe. Thank you guys for watching. Tomorrow night will be the Dragons preview, and I'll see you guys then. Have a good one.